Okay. Now let's see. We're here in Sanhedrin on Daf Ayin Beis Amid Beis. Let me just see if I can. So let's just mention a chiddush that we said in the name of Reb Chaim about Ein Dochin Nefesh Mipnei Nefesh. And we said the following: we cannot take the life of one person in order to save the life of another person. And that's called my chazis. We don't know, we can't determine which life is more significant in the eyes of the Almighty than another life. But Reb Chaim wants to be mechadish that there's something way beyond that. And even if you're not taking the life of someone else, but by saving your life, you are causing a, shall we say, a chain reaction, which ultimately will mean that someone else will die. And yesterday we said, like the example where he could redeem his son and save his son, but another child will be taking his place. So therefore, if the goyim say, give us so-and-so, and you'll all survive, then Reish Lakish is of the opinion that you cannot give that person up, says Reb Chaim, because in doing so, you're saving yourself at the expense of someone who's going to lose his life. And the chiddush again is, even though if we do nothing, he'll die anyway. But that's right now, that's not relevant to us. So we're not allowed to give him over to be killed by the goyim, according to Reish Lakish, even though, again, A, the goyim had earmarked that particular person, and B, even though that person will perish in any event if we don't give him up. Says Reb Chaim, because we are now saving ourselves through the death of someone else. And that itself is prohibited. And Reb Chaim is going to base this on Rabbi Akiva and Ben Petura in the case where two people are holding on to a canteen. But before we see the proof, let's just make sure we understand the formulation of Reb Chaim's dictum, which has such tremendous ramifications. Reb Chaim is saying the following: we have a new prohibition, which we're going to formulate, that you're not allowed to save yourself at the expense of someone else who's going to die, and all other considerations are irrelevant. You're going to tell me, well, eventually he's going to die anyway. You're going to tell me you're not killing him, the goyim are killing him. You're going to tell me, well, the goyim specify they want him. And if not, they'll destroy everyone and he'll die too. All those considerations, all those factors are irrelevant. All that's relevant is A plus B. Are you saving yourself? And B, through or what results from your act of Hatzalah is that somebody will die. How he will die? Would he have died anyway? Are you playing God over here? No, none of that. But it's still prohibited. Osur lahatzil atzmo im gorem al yidei kach misas chaver. And what's Reb Chaim's proof? Shnayim shaholchim b'derech b'mitzid af samach beis u'biyad echad mehem kiton shel mayim im shosim shneim If they divide it up, they'll both perish. If Shosei Echad Mehem Magil Yishuv, let's say the Yishuv is 100 miles away. So if he gets enough hydration from this canteen, he could last for 100 miles. But less than, the entire volume of water in that canteen, he won't make it. No, he's going to make it if you split it. If Shosei Echad Mehem Magil Yishuv, Darash Ben Petura, Mutav Sheyishtu Shneim V'Yamusu Shneim. Split the water, they'll both die. One should not see or live to see the death of his friend. They're both going to die. Go ahead and drink the water. So Rabbi Akiva is against Reb Chaim, right? So what is Reb Chaim is building himself on Ben Petura, who says they will both perish, they'll split the water. So first of all, we have a pressing lumdish need to explain Ben Petura. Why split the water and both die? Why not cut your losses? But the answer is, if you're going to drink the water yourself, then you are saving yourself in a way that's going to cause the death of someone else. In a certain sense, since this water could save his life, it's like the case where Reish Lakish says, if you give up this person, you're saving the life through the death of this person. The water here represents the life or the death of, we'll call him Shimon. So if Ruvain drinks the water, he is now, by cutting off that water supply from Shimon, he's in effect causing the death of Shimon. Like giving over a Jew to the Goyim to be killed. And we're not allowed to save ourselves through giving over the life force, the possibility of life, to another Jew. What about Rabbi Akiva? We don't pass like Ben Petur, we accept Rabbi Akiva. Chayecha kodmi l'chai chavercha. So I just want to interject here before we move on that very strange. Rabbi Akiva quotes a pasuk. I believe it's in Parshas Bahar, if I'm not mistaken. It's mashma that there's a special heter here. The Torah gave us a permission and a license of v'che'achicha imach. Chayecha kod milachai chavercha. If we could find a scenario in which there's no v'che'achicha imach, and we cannot apply the pasuk and the principle of chayecha kodmin, then logically, even Rabbi Akiva would have to agree to the position of Ben Petura, because the Gemara says Ad shedorash Rabbi Akiva. If not for Rabbi Akiva's pasuk, he himself, Rabbi Akiva, would have accepted the position of Ben Petura, that by drinking the water, you're saving yourself at the expense of someone else's life, and that you're not allowed to do. So Rav Soloveitchik says the following, in the name of Reb Chaim, that when does v'che'achicha imach apply? When does this pasuk teach me that chayecha kod milachai chavercha? Under what circumstances? And the answer is, when you own the water. It's your canteen of water. Chayecha kod. You don't have to give up your water in order to establish that his life is worth more than yours, I'm going to save him and I'm going to perish. No, you don't have to do that. Because chayecha kodmi. But im lo haya biyado kiton shel mayim, like let's say two people have to save themselves by jumping off the ship before it goes down. And on the water, there's a life buoy, but only one person can use it. What do you do in that case? Do you have the right to take the buoy for yourself? What do they call those things? The life belt? No, what's it called?
Life preserver.
Life preserver. It's round, yeah, like a donut. Says Reb Chaim, an amazing chiddush, very scary one, could have tremendous repercussions. He's saying that Rabbi Akiva would agree that if you don't have possession of the kiton shel mayim, there's a lifesaver out there, and both of us, again, I keep mentioning as a kid, we used to play snatch the bag. Does that ring it? Right? So he's on one side, you're on the other side, they tell you go, and who can snatch the bag without the other guy, before he could get back to home base. So in such a case, there's no chayecha kodmi l'chai chavercha. Why should your life be more important than his? And Rabbi Akiva, in such a case, would accept and embrace the shita ben ptura. Because if you jump on this lifesaver, you are saving yourself at the expense, because this lifesaver represents life or death for Shimon as well, at the expense of Shimon's life. The Af Rabbi Akiva, if let's say the kiton shel mayim is not in your possession, it's it's right there, it's hefker, somebody left the kiton shel mayim there. The also lahasils atzmai, they should go and misal chavero. I wonder, where is this Iser written? Where's it derived from? Is it Svara? One part of me says that maybe it's based on a premise that Gram Misa is like Ritzicha. If you cause his death, it's like you murdered him. You can't murder him to save your life. That I wouldn't look for a source for. But the fact that if he doesn't get this water to drink, I have killed him, that seems a bit much. Let's take the following scenario. Let's say Shimon got there first. And he's holding on to the canteen or the lifesaver. Now Reuven wants to grab it away from him in order to save his own life. That for sure would be prohibited. No, you're literally taking away his oxygen. That's ritzicha. Okay, maybe technically, you'll find that it's not exactly a meiser ritzicha; it's a gram ritzicha. But basically, taking away from someone the source of his life, the oxygen that he needs, is ritzicha. What they call pulling the plug, right? But if I can get there first, ורק באופן שכבר יש בידו קיטון של מים, דורש רבי עקיבא דמותר לו לשתוס מכיוון דחייך קודמה. ואין זה נחשב למצל עצמו על ידי מיסס חברו. And therefore, אף רבי עקיבא model as far as ben ptura, diyesh isur lahatzilus atzma de mis chavero. Oh, v'yesh lomad ha-makor l'din zeh. Again, when he says the makor, he's looking for the source of this din that you're not allowed to save yourself if it causes the death of someone else. He's looking for a halachic source. I'm looking for a source in the Torah. Yesh lomad ha-makor l'din zeh she'osel linotzel al yidei misas chavero hu me'at tosefta b'trumos Seya shel b'nei Adam she'amru lahem goyim tnu lanu echad mikem v'nargeu. V'yim lav harei anu hargen es kulchem yehargu kulam v'al yimsu lehem nefesh achas b'Yisrael. I don't know. I guess he means Reish Lakish, yeah, but okay, fine. We'll have to figure out Rabbi Yochanan, but can you think along with me now? Is there a difference? I don't know. I just intuitively sense there's a difference between the case of giving someone up to be killed and the case of grabbing onto the water in order to save yourself, when no one else has grabbed yet has achieved possession of the water. Very simply. Giving up someone to be killed to the Goyim is not an act of Hatzolah. Its purpose is of Hatzolah, but it's an act of Gram Misa. And you're cutting off the oxygen of that person that you're giving up. It's like the case where he already has the lifeboat or the canteen, and now you grab it away from him. But if he hasn't grabbed onto the canteen yet, and you get there first, or the lifeboat, or the lifesaver, and chayecha, you're saving your own life, that atzola, that's not the same as giving, right? In other words, grabbing onto the water, if no one is holding the water, that's an act of atzola. But giving up someone to be killed, that's an act of ritzicha. So I don't see it as a very precise analogy. I mean, clearly, when you grab onto the water to save yourself and you're dying, that's not an act of gram ritzicha. It might be a gram ritzicha, but it's not inherent in the action you're doing. You cannot define or describe the action of grabbing onto the water to save your own life as an act of gram ritzicha. It happens to be, in this case, there's one other person and maybe even other people that will perish because they too, like you, are stuck in this desert and they have no water. But taking the water in order to save yourself is a wonderful act of atzolah. But to give up someone to the lion's den, to be executed by the goyim, how can we be matir such a thing? But now we have Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says that if the goyim specified who they want, Otherwise, they'll raise the whole ground, the whole city to the ground, and we give them up. He says, "Yesh lo b'der Rav Yochanan sover to be ofen sha'akum yichdu azay hareu nase lerodef b'shevi altas." I think we touched on this the other day. Right, there's the classic rodef b'maiser redifa, and then there's a rodef whose very existence in the present scenario, his location, wherever he is causing or endangering the life of others. That makes him a rodef. B'shevi altas. And this we saw in the case of the heavy weight in the ship. And we saw it in the case of the ubar before it pops its head out. It's a rodef b'shevi altas. The afal pi dibi alma beinon din chiv misa de rodef k'dei lahamis is a rodef. Right, we said there were two goals or purposes of the din rodef. One is to save the nirdaf. The other is that the rodef himself is chayav misa. Now here, in the case of Yichdu, Rav Yochanan is saying that he's not Chayiv Misa. The guy want him. Maybe because he's one of the heroes of the Jews. Din Chayiv Misa chalk sherodef b'kuvasei, mashen ki b'rodef v'shevi altas. The leka chiv misa el dechal din larogas harodef mishum atzos hanirda. Hainu rak yesheyesh iser etzicha lahargo. Ach biofen shebenko harodef yehareg. V'ein kan iser etzicha. El diyesh isu lahatzil satzmal yidei misas chavera zay im agavra havi rodef vafilu murak rodef v'shevi altas emutal lemosra v'lo chal b'chay gavna isu sha'osur li notzel al yidei misas chavera. So again, in a rodef b'shevi altas, so why do we need a chiyuv misa? And the answer is because we're going to be taking the taking the life of the rodef, and that itself is ritzicha. We can't do that unless the rodef is himself not subject to ritzicha. So Flu Yitzir, we could find a Rodef B'Shevi Altase. And taking his life for the purpose of Hatzolas HaNirdaf would not entail Ritzicha. Then basically with Hatzolas HaNirdaf, we could take the life of the Rodef. And why here is this guy a Rodef B'Shevi Altas? Because the Goyim only want him. So his life is the impediment for the lives of everyone else. Okay, but in a Rodef, we need Chiyuv Misa. So the answer is because otherwise it's a Ritzicha. But in this case, says Rabbi Yochanan, since Yichdu and in any event he's going to die, so he's a Rodef, albeit B'Shevi Altaseh, and there's no Isur Ritzicha yet because he's going to die in any event. Is that what he's saying here? The Ofen Shebenko Harodef Yehare Ein Kan Isur Ritzicha. So you can't violate Ritzicha for the sake of Hatzalah. And we really stretched it and we said that if you take the water and he will perish because he can't get access to that water, then that's called Ritzicha. I don't get it. Because he's not a Rodef. Okay, he's not a Rodef. So basically, if I understand correctly, we're going to combine two factors here in order to understand how Rabbi Yochanan permits you to give up this person. Factor number one is that the Goyim, earmarked him, and therefore his life is threatening the life of everyone else. That makes him a Rodef B'Shevi Altas. Now we have to add another proposition. So you've solved the problem of saving yourself, of violating the prohibition of saving yourself at the expense of someone else's death. That we can solve through the Parsha of Rodef. And there is such a thing as a Rodef B'Shevi Altas. But we need another condition to be met, because even in a case of a Rodef, we need a Chiyuv Misa. And why is that? Because if that Rodef has no Chiyuv Misa, then Ein Docher Nefesh V'nei Nefesh, you're not allowed to kill someone to save someone else. And here's where we have the second condition. Namely, that this person is not only a Rodef, but he's going to die in any event. So for the sake of Hatzalah, we'll kill the Rodef, even though the Rodef is not Chayav Misa, because the Rodef would die in any event. So it's a little different here. In other words, normally the circumstance in which you're allowed to kill the Rodef is that the Ritzich of the Rodef is mitigated by the fact that the Rodef is Chayav Misa. So you have two factors. Number one, Atzolos HaNirdaf. But number two, the Rodef is Chayav Misa. That I understand. But if you need that additional condition, namely that the Rodef is Chayav Misa, what are you going to do with Rodef V'Shevi Altase? He's not Chayav Misa. But the answer to that is that the reason why you kill why the allowance, the permission to kill the Rodef requires not only Atzolos HaNirdaf but also the Chiyuv Misa, because otherwise you're doing a Ritzicha for the sake of Atzolah. We can't allow Ritzicha for the sake of Atzolah. But if Lu Yitzur, we could come up with a scenario in which the Rodef B'Shevi Altase is a dead man, so to speak, right? He's destined to die. That removes the Isur Ritzicha. You're saving yourself at the expense of his death by giving him over to the Goyim. The answer is that since Yichdu, he becomes a Rodef, albeit B'Shevi Altas. So there's no problem of saving myself at the expense of the death of someone who's a Rodef. But now we get into the laws of Rodef. And in the laws of Rodef, we need a second condition to be fulfilled. And that means that we circumvent the Isur Ritzicha. So how do we circumvent the Isur Ritzicha? Normally, since the Rodef is a Rodef for Kuvaseh, that generates a Chiyuv Misa. In a Rodef, right, and therefore it's not Ritzicha. But in a Rodef B'Shevi Altaseh, where clearly there's no Chiyuv Misa on the Rodef, what's going to mitigate the Isur Ritzicha that allows me to kill the Rodef? It's going to have to be, in the case of Rodef B'Shevi Altas, that he's going to die anyway. And once we determine that he's going to die in any event, then killing him would not constitute a Isur Ritzicha. Whoa, it's really complicated. Now we have Reish Lakish. Let's go back, keeps going back and forth. Now Reish Lakish says that even though they designated this person, which we said that makes him into a Rodef, B'Shevi Altaseh, Says Reish Lakish, we still cannot kill him. We can't give him up to be killed. Because he's not Chayav Misa. So we said that you're not allowed to save yourself through the Misa of Chavero. And this Rodef is not Chayav Misa. So you're in effect saving your life by having this guy die. But we said that he's a Rodef. Does Reish Lakish agree that he's a Rodef? So Reish Lakish is going to say, okay, he's a Rodef, but in a Rodef for Shevi Alta said we certainly need a Chiyuv Misa. Where's the Chiyuv Misa on this guy? So we said that we wanted to take off the Isa Ritzicha because he's going to die anyway. He says the following: Yesh lomad Reb Yochanan Reish Lakish nechleku ha'im yesh Isur li notzel al yidei misas rodev shu rodev b'shevi altaseh. Yeah, but we said that only applies if he's going to die anyway. To Rabbi Yochanan, so where the Mikevan de Nasa Rodei Fishevi Altas Mutal Hargo Kidei Lahatzilas Atzmo. But why? He's not Chayav Misa. So he's saying he's a Rodef, but we said that a Rodef needs also Chayav Misa, and that's where we introduced the fact that there's no problem in killing him because he's going to die anyway. Either Reish Lakish sover the Afal Pidavi Rodef V'Shevi Altas Adain Chal Isul Hatzel Atzmo Yidei Nefesh Chavero. All right, I don't know. Now he's sort of backtracking. V'od Yesh Lomar de Reish Lakish sover she'Afal Pi Sheichdu Ha'akum Li Moser La Riga O Yargu Kulam. Ein Adam Shenischayev Shenis Yached Nechshav LeRodef Ela Ha'akum Horod. So now he's adding another dimension that we cannot consider that person that they designated as a Rodef because the Rodef is the Akum. The Akum is the one who's trying to kill him. And therefore, Yosul and Mosul and Misal and Cain who morid b'malchus kishem ben bichri dios havigavra ketila. So it means that Rabbi Yochanan holds that once they were miyached him, he becomes a Rodef. And that sounds awfully similar to the Rambam Shita, that the weight that's bringing the ship down is a Rodef. Your very existence, that weighty object, is endangering the life of those on the crew, on those on the ship. Here also, that person who is designated, his life is is endangering the life of everyone else. So that's Rabbi Yochanan. Comes along Reish Lakish, he says, no. The real Rodef is not the Jew who's been earmarked, but rather the Goyim who are earmarking the Jew. They have the status of Rodef. Maybe Rabbi Yochanan holds you have two people or groups of people that have the status simultaneously of a Rodef. Or maybe alternatively, Reish Lakish, like the Ravid in the name of the Gaon, never accepted the concept of Rodef V'Shevi Altas. Right? You remember that the Ravid had an argument against the Rambam in the case of that weighty merchandise that was weighing down the boat. So therefore, Reish Lakish says Osul Mosol Misa, unless he's a Morid B'Malchus. Okay, then this is where we'll stop for today. Wow, we didn't really go very far in the Gemara, but we're still trying to figure out, this whole concept, and we have to review it over and over again, that you can't save yourself if it'll cause the death of someone else, together with the concept of Yichduhu, which might introduce a Rodef B'Shevi Al Taseh, and then the question of Chiyuv Misa, and whether or not there's a Chiyuv Misa and an Isur Etzicha without the Chiyuv Misa, in the case of Yichdu, where the other option is he's going to die anyway. A lot of variables here. Okay then? All right, great. Have a good day. Thank you so much.